The soldier trudged through the dusty streets, his uniform stained with sweat and dirt from a long day of patrol. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the desolate landscape of the war-torn country. Every step felt heavier than the last, as the exhaustion from the day's duties weighed on him. His boots kicked up small clouds of sand, and the sound of distant gunfire still echoed in his ears, a grim reminder of the constant tension that hung in the air. His mind wandered, not to the chaos of the war, but to his family back home, his wife, his young daughter. He could almost hear his daughter's laughter, a sound that felt like a lifetime ago. How long had it been since he'd held them in his arms? His heart ached with longing, a pain sharper than any wound he had ever suffered. As he turned a corner, a small figure caught his eye. A child, no older than 6 or 7, sat on the cracked pavement, her tiny frame hunched over, looking up at him with wide, pleading eyes. Her clothes were torn and covered in dirt, her face smudged with grime, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched them together, almost as if she were trying to hold on to some piece of hope. The soldier stopped in his tracks, his gaze locked with hers. She didn't speak, but there was no need for words. Her eyes told the story of hunger, desperation, and a world that had forgotten her. He could see the ribs beneath her thin shirt, and her legs were little more than sticks. He reached into his pocket, hoping to find something to give her. His fingers brushed against the cold metal of a few coins, but his heart sank when he realized he had only $1 left. It was all he had to his name, and it had been earmarked for something else, maybe a small treat for himself later, a fleeting sense of comfort in this unforgiving place. For a moment, he hesitated. Was it enough? Could a single dollar make any difference in this child's life? But as he looked at her again, the way her eyes held his, he knew what he had to do. His chest tightened as he pulled out the crumpled bill, kneeling in front of her. "Here," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "Take it. It's not much, but it's all I've got." The child's face lit up, her eyes widening in disbelief, then filling with tears. She took the dollar from him, clutching it like it was the most precious thing in the world. No words were needed. Her smile, though small, was all the thanks he needed. The soldier stood up slowly, his heart heavier than ever, but somehow lighter at the same time. He watched the child disappear into the crowd, hoping that his small gesture could bring her some comfort, even if just for a moment. Little did he know, this simple act of kindness would change his life forever. The sun had set completely now, and the camp was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of the wind through the dry grass. The soldier sat with his back against a crate, trying to get some rest. His eyelids were heavy, but his mind was still racing, unable to quiet the thoughts that kept swirling around. The image of the child's hungry eyes lingered in his mind, as vivid as the moment he had seen her on the street. He thought about his own daughter, how safe and loved she was back home. It felt like a lifetime ago since he had held her in his arms. The contrast between his life and that child's couldn't have been more stark. He had the luxury of worrying about the future, of dreaming about what might be, while she was just trying to survive, day by day. The soldier sighed, rubbing his face, trying to push the guilt from his chest. Just as he was about to drift into a light sleep, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. At first, he thought it might be one of the other soldiers, but the steps were too measured, too deliberate. The soldier's body tensed, his instincts kicking in. He stood quickly, his hand instinctively moving toward the rifle at his side. A man appeared at the edge of the camp, tall and rugged, with a hard expression carved into his weathered face. His clothes were simple, but there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was no ordinary man. The soldier's heart skipped a beat. This was no local civilian. The man's eyes locked onto the soldier, and for a moment, there was only silence. The tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unspoken words. Then, in a voice low but filled with unmistakable authority, the man spoke. "You gave my daughter money," he said, his tone demanding an answer. The soldier's breath caught in his throat. His thoughts scrambled, trying to make sense of what was happening. The man was angry. He could see it in the way his fists were clenched at his sides. He took a cautious step forward, meeting the man's gaze with as much calmness as he could muster. I gave her $1. the soldier said slowly, his voice steady but unsure. She looked hungry. It's all I had left. The man didn't move for a long moment, his eyes narrowing as he studied the soldier. The soldier could feel his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of the man's gaze making him feel small, vulnerable. You think $1's enough? The father's voice was quieter now, but there was a coldness to it. Do you think that small gesture will change anything for her? The soldier was about to respond when the man suddenly took a deep breath, his expression shifting. The anger in his face slowly faded, replaced by something else, determination perhaps, or a kind of strange respect. What if I told you? The father continued, his voice more controlled now, that your kindness could change your life. The soldier blinked, thrown off guard by the unexpected turn in the conversation. He straightened slightly, still wary but intrigued. Change my life? He repeated, his skepticism clear. The father nodded, his eyes never leaving the soldier's face. Yes, I have an offer for you. A way out of this war. A chance to make something of yourself, something bigger than you've ever imagined. The soldier was silent, the weight of the man's words sinking in. What kind of offer could this stranger possibly be talking about? Despite the doubts rising in him, part of him couldn't help but be curious. The father motioned for the soldier to follow him, and they walked a short distance away from the camp into the shadows of the surrounding trees. The soldier's mind was racing. Every instinct he had told him to stay alert, but something about the man's presence made him hesitant to draw his weapon. There was something calm, almost calculated, about the way the man spoke, as if every word had been carefully chosen. When they were far enough from the others, the man finally spoke, his voice low and measured. I need you to understand something, he began. I'm not just any man, I'm a businessman. I own a thriving company. My resources are vast, and my reach extends far beyond what most people can comprehend. But I don't just deal in money, I deal in opportunity, and that's what I'm offering you. The soldier blinked, trying to process the information. The man before him didn't look like a businessman. He was rugged, weathered, as though he had lived through the same hardships as the soldier. But his words held weight, and the soldier couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a chance encounter. My name is Kadir, the man continued, his eyes locking with the soldier's. And I've been watching you for some time now. I've seen how you've handled yourself in this place. The way you carry yourself, your compassion for that child today. It's rare, especially in a place like this. It's why I'm offering you this opportunity. In exchange for the kindness you showed my daughter, I want to offer you a chance to change your life, to leave this war behind and start something new. The soldier's chest tightened. Was this a joke? A trick? He had spent so much time on the battlefield, fighting for survival, and now this stranger, this businessman, was offering him a way out? It sounded too good to be true. The soldier shook his head, the confusion only deepening. Why me? He asked, his voice full of disbelief. Why are you offering me this? I gave $1 to your daughter, that's all. I'm just a soldier. I've got nothing to my name. Kadir's expression softened, and he placed a hand on the soldier's shoulder, his grip firm, but not threatening. You gave her more than just money. You gave her hope. That's something that's harder to come by in this world than anything else. I've watched men like you, soldiers, mercenaries, pass by, ignoring children like mine, forgetting the most basic of human decency. But you didn't. You gave her everything you had. And that's why I'm here. The soldier was quiet for a long moment, trying to absorb the words. His mind flashed back to the child, her hungry eyes, her smile when he handed her the last of his money. Could that really have meant so much to someone? Kadir took a step back, studying him closely. In exchange for that act of kindness, I want to offer you a position in my company. A job that will pay you more money than you could ever imagine, with opportunities to grow and succeed. I know you've been through hell here, and I'm offering you a way out. No more fighting, no more uncertainty, just a future. A real future. The soldier's heart pounded in his chest. This was the kind of opportunity he had only dreamed of. It was more than he had ever hoped for. A way out of the war, a way to provide for his family without the constant fear and danger. But even as the words hung in the air, doubt crept into his mind. Why me? He asked again, his voice quieter this time, almost to himself. Why would you want someone like me? I don't know anything about business. Kadir smiled, his eyes gleaming with something the soldier couldn't quite place. You don't need to know everything about business. What you have is more valuable than any skill. You have integrity, loyalty, and those are the qualities I need. I can teach you the rest. But I need someone like you, someone who understands what it means to help others, to be part of something bigger than themselves. The soldier felt a tug in his chest, torn between the reality of the war that had shaped him and the unknown path Kadir was offering. The idea of a better life, a safer life, was tempting. But there was still a part of him that was unsure. Could he trust this man? Could he trust the promise of a life that seemed too good to be true? Kadir seemed to sense the hesitation. I'm not asking you to decide right now. Think about it. But I can tell you this much. The world won't remember your small act of kindness, but I will. And I can promise you that you'll never have to worry about where your next meal comes from again. The soldier stood there, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His entire future was suddenly in the hands of a man he barely knew, based on a single, fleeting moment of generosity. It was a decision that could change everything, but was it worth the risk? The next day, Kadir returned to the soldier's camp, his expression more serious than before. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Without preamble, he spoke in a low, commanding voice. I have a task for you. A test, if you will. If you succeed, I will fulfill my promise to you. You'll leave this war, and you'll join my company. Your life will change in ways you can't yet imagine. The soldier's heart raced. He had thought that the hardest part would be making the decision to trust Kadir. But now, as he stood facing the man, he realized that the real challenge was just beginning. What kind of task? The soldier asked, his voice betraying the wariness he felt. Kadir's gaze hardened. A high-stakes mission. There's a shipment, a highly valuable one, that needs to be intercepted. It's being transported through a dangerous area, heavily guarded. You will be required to sneak in, retrieve the goods, and bring them back. No questions asked. Do this, and I will make sure your future is secure. The soldier felt a lump rise in his throat. He had seen these kinds of missions before. Dangerous, unpredictable, often ending in death. It wasn't the kind of job he ever thought he would take on. But as he looked at Kadir, who seemed so confident, so sure of himself, the soldier couldn't deny the pull of the opportunity. A way out. A new life. He hesitated, fighting the instinct that screamed at him to walk away. But the promise of security, of escaping the brutal life of a soldier, was too tempting. And deep down, a part of him knew that this could be his chance to truly change his fate. I'll do it. The soldier finally said, his voice quiet but firm. Kadir smiled, his eyes gleaming with approval. Good, I knew you'd make the right choice. But as Kadir turned to leave, the soldier felt an unfamiliar weight settling on his shoulders. He was about to embark on something he wasn't prepared for. He didn't know exactly what was in the shipment, who the enemy might be, or how dangerous the mission would really be. But the thought of failure, of letting go of the chance to build a new life, pushed those fears down. The next few hours were a blur as the soldier prepared for the mission. He checked and rechecked his gear, his hands trembling as he packed the bare essentials: ammunition, water, food. Every decision felt crucial, and every moment spent in the camp felt like one closer to the edge of the unknown. But with every passing second, doubts began to creep in. Was he walking into a trap? Was Kadir truly offering him a future? Or was this just another game to test his loyalty before discarding him? He didn't know the full extent of the man's business, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. What if he failed? What if this was a test that would cost him more than just his life? As the soldier stood alone, the sounds of the camp fading around him, a question echoed in his mind. Was this truly his chance to escape, or was he just another pawn in someone else's game? The night of the mission, the soldier moved through the darkness, his heart pounding as he navigated the rugged terrain. Every step felt like a step closer to danger, and the air was thick with tension. He had spent hours preparing, but now that he was in the field, everything felt uncertain. His instincts were on high alert, but the mission was as dangerous as Kadir had promised. He reached the target area just as dawn began to break. The shipment was being guarded by men heavily armed, their silhouettes visible in the dim light. The soldier's heart raced. He had to get past them, retrieve the goods, and get out alive. It seemed impossible, but he had no choice. As he moved forward, trying to stay out of sight, disaster struck. A guard spotted him. A sharp shout pierced the air, and before the soldier could react, a bullet grazed his shoulder, knocking him off balance. He hit the ground hard, pain searing through his body, but his training kicked in. He crawled into the shadows, clutching his shoulder, trying to steady his breath. The guards were closing in. He had to move, but with his injury, every step felt like a death sentence. Just as the soldiers were about to surround him, a shot rang out from the distance, and the guards went down one by one. The soldier, in a daze, barely registered what had happened before a figure emerged from the darkness. The man was tall, his face covered by a mask. He moved quickly, efficiently, his movements fluid as he grabbed the soldier and pulled him to safety. They ducked behind a rock just as the remaining guards rushed past, unaware that their target had been saved. "You're lucky I was watching your back," the mysterious figure said, his voice low but steady. The soldier, still in shock, struggled to find his words. Who are you?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed the soldier a small device, a communicator. "Kadir knows about you," he said cryptically. "This mission, it was never just about the goods. It was about testing you. Testing your resilience, your survival instincts, your willingness to do what's necessary to succeed." As the soldier's mind raced, the pieces began to fall into place. The mission had been a test not just for loyalty, but for strength, adaptability, and survival. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was being shaped, groomed for something far bigger than he had ever imagined. The father's company wasn't just a business. It was a network of people working in the shadows, people who understood what it took to survive the harshest environments. The soldier wasn't just a recruit. He was part of a much larger plan, a plan that could change the course of his life forever. And it wasn't about money, it was about shaping the future of those who could endure the impossible. The soldier realized, with a sinking feeling, that Kadir hadn't just offered him a way out. He had offered him a way in, to a world where survival was everything. The soldier returned to camp, his mind heavy with the weight of what had just happened. His body ached from the mission, and the injury on his shoulder throbbed with every movement, but it was the uncertainty that gnawed at him the most. He had been tested. His loyalty, his courage, his ability to survive. He had passed, but at what cost? The mysterious ally who had saved him hadn't said much after the rescue, only that Kadir had been watching him closely. The mission had never been about the shipment. It had been a test of his resolve. But now, as he sat alone in his tent, the soldier wondered if he had truly passed. What had he really accomplished? Had he proven his worth to Kadir, or had he simply been a pawn in a much larger game? He thought back to the moment he had given his last dollar to the hungry child, the simple act of kindness that had sparked this entire chain of events. Could that small, seemingly insignificant decision really have led him here? To this crossroads, where his future was uncertain and his choices would shape the rest of his life? Kadir had promised him a way out, a life free from the dangers of war, the constant struggle for survival. But that life came with its own risks, a life filled with shadows and power. The offer wasn't just about money, as the soldier had once thought. It was about becoming part of something much bigger. A network of people who lived on the edge, who thrived in a world of danger and wealth. The soldier had always known the brutality of war, the way it stripped men of their humanity. But Kadir's world, this world of power and intrigue, seemed even more dangerous in its own way. There would be no more simple acts of kindness, no more clear-cut decisions. Every choice would come with consequences, and survival would depend on his ability to navigate a world where trust was scarce and betrayal was common. As he sat in the dim light of his tent, the soldier thought about the child again, the look of gratitude on her face when he gave her that last dollar. In that moment, he had been a man of integrity, of compassion. But could he continue to be that man in a world like Kadir's? Could he hold on to that kindness, or would the darkness of power and greed consume him? The soldier's future lay before him, a path shrouded in uncertainty. He could stay as a soldier, continuing the life he knew, filled with danger but also with a sense of purpose. Or he could accept Kadir's offer, stepping into a world that promised wealth and power, but also danger beyond anything he had ever imagined. He took a deep breath, knowing that the decision he made now would change his life forever. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring you more emotional and gripping tales every week. Like this video if it touched you, and feel free to comment your thoughts below. We'd love to hear what you think. And if you know someone who would love this story, share it with them. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for watching.